My son-in-law forced me to sell my house and threw me out on the street like a dog. My own daughter threw a broken garbage bag at my chest and shouted, "Take your trash and get out of our lives." I stood on the rainy curb, humiliated, homeless, and broken. But when I opened that bag later in a flea bag motel, I didn't find old clothes. I found a savings account book with $900,000 and a secret note that changed everything. My name is Cliff Douglas, and this is how I destroyed the people who thought they could throw me away like garbage. Before I tell you how I got my revenge, tell me in the comments, have you ever been betrayed by the one person you trusted most? Like this video, if you believe in karma. The sound of packing tape ripping off the dispenser was the loudest thing in the world. It sounded like someone tearing a piece of canvas over and over again. R.I.P. Bye. That noise echoed off the empty walls of the living room I had built with my own hands 40 years ago. I stood by the fireplace, my cane trembling in my hand, watching strangers handle my life. They were movers hired by my son-in-law, and they were tossing my belongings into boxes with the same care one would give to yard waste. "Hey, be careful with that," I shouted, my voice raspy. That was my wife's collection. The mover didn't even look at me. He just shoved a stack of porcelain plates into a box without wrapping them. I took a step forward, intending to stop him, but a hand grabbed my shoulder and yanked me back. It wasn't a gentle pull. It was forceful, aggressive, the kind of grip you use on an unruly child. "Sit down, Cliff," the voice sneered. "You are getting in the way." I turned to see Justin, my son-in-law. He was wearing a suit that cost more than my first car. His hair gelled back perfectly, checking his watch as if evicting his father-in-law was just another appointment on his busy calendar. He was a real estate agent, charming to his clients, but a monster behind closed doors. "Justin, tell them to stop," I said, trying to stand tall despite my bad knee. "This is my house. Beatrice and I bought this land. We built this. You can't just pack me up." Justin laughed. It was a dry, hollow sound. "It hasn't been your house for 3 days, Cliff. The sale closed on Tuesday. The money has already been wired. And honestly, you should be thanking me. I got a great price for this teardown." He walked past me and pointed at the old velvet armchair in the corner. It was Beatrice's favorite chair. The fabric was worn on the arms where she used to rest her hands while reading. It was the only thing I had asked to keep. The only piece of furniture that still smelled like her perfume, vanilla, and old books. "Toss that chair in the dumpster," Justin commanded the movers. "No," I roared. I lunged for the chair. I threw my body over it, hugging the velvet. "I told you I'm taking this. It's coming with me." Justin sighed, rolling his eyes. He walked over and grabbed the back of my collar. "Look at you," he spat, his voice dropping to a whisper so the movers wouldn't hear the venom. "You are pathetic. You are going to a state-assisted nursing facility, Cliff, a room the size of a closet. There is no room for this dusty, moth-eaten piece of junk. You don't need furniture where you are going. You are just going there to wait until you die." He shoved me. I stumbled back, my cane slipping on the hardwood floor. I fell hard, my hip hitting the ground with a sickening thud. Pain shot up my spine, but the humiliation hurt worse. The movers stopped and looked, but Justin waved them on. "Keep moving. We are on a schedule." I looked up at him from the floor. "You have no right," I wheezed. "I have every right." Justin smiled, tapping the breast pocket of his jacket. "You signed the power of attorney 6 months ago, remember? After your little stroke. You gave Rachel and me full control over your assets, your medical decisions, and your living arrangements. You trusted us." I remembered. I had been weak, confused in the hospital bed. Justin had been there with the papers, smiling, telling me not to worry about the bills. He had switched my blood pressure medication the week before the stroke, claiming the pharmacy changed brands. I hadn't thought anything of it then. Now, looking at his shark-like grin, I realized I hadn't been sick. I had been managed. "Get him up," Justin ordered one of the movers, "and get that chair out of here." I watched helplessly as two men hoisted Beatrice's chair and carried it out the front door. Through the window, I saw them heave it into the back of a truck filled with trash, not the moving van. They weren't moving me. They were erasing me. I stood up, using the wall for support. My hands were shaking, not from age, but from a rage I hadn't felt in years. I wasn't just a retired accountant. I spent 30 years as a forensic auditor. I used to hunt down embezzlers and corporate thieves who thought they were smarter than everyone else. I had let my guard down because this was family. I had let love blind me. But as I watched Justin check his phone, smiling at a text message, the fog in my brain began to clear. "Where is Rachel?" I asked, my voice low. "Does she know you are throwing away her mother's chair?" Justin didn't even look up. "Who do you think signed the work order, Cliff? She is the one who wants you gone. She is tired of taking care of you." I felt like I had been punched in the gut. Rachel, my little girl. I had raised her alone after Beatrice got sick the first time. I paid for her college. I walked her down the aisle to this man, even though I had a bad feeling about him. I had given them everything. "I don't believe you," I said. Justin gestured toward the open front door. "Why don't you ask her? She is right outside." I walked out onto the porch. The Seattle sky was gray and heavy, a light drizzle already starting to slick the pavement. There were cars slowed down on the street, neighbors watching from their windows. The spectacle of the old man being evicted. And there, standing by Justin's sleek black Mercedes, was Rachel. She was wearing a trench coat, her arms crossed tight against her chest. She looked pale, her eyes red-rimmed. For a second I thought she was crying for me. I thought she would run up the driveway, hug me, and tell Justin to stop this madness. I took a step toward her. "Rachel." "Honey," I called out. She looked up. Her expression wasn't one of love. It was cold, hard. She reached into the back seat of the car and pulled out a large, heavy black garbage bag. It was torn at the corner, gray stuffing poking out. She walked up the driveway to meet me. She didn't hug me. She stopped 3 feet away. "Rachel, please," I begged. "You can't let him do this. That was your mother's chair. This is our home." Rachel took a deep breath. She looked at Justin, who was standing on the porch behind me, arms folded, watching with a smirk. Then she looked back at me. Her eyes were wild, frantic almost. "I am done, Dad," she screamed. Her voice cracked loud enough for the neighbors across the street to hear. "I am done taking care of you. I am done with your complaints. I am done with your sickness. You are a burden. Do you hear me? A burden." I froze. It was like she had slapped me. "Rachel," I whispered. "Take it," she yelled. She swung the heavy garbage bag with both hands and threw it right at my chest. I wasn't expecting it. The weight of it knocked the wind out of me. I stumbled backward, clutching the plastic to keep from falling again. "Take your trash and get out," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at the street. "That is all the clothes you need. I don't want to see you again. Don't call us. Don't come back. Just go." The silence that followed was deafening. The movers stopped. The neighbors on the sidewalk stopped walking their dogs. Everyone was looking at Cliff Douglas, the man who had lived here for 40 years, being treated like a stray animal by his own daughter. Justin walked down the steps and wrapped an arm around Rachel's waist. He kissed her temple, a gesture of ownership. "You did good, babe," he said, loud enough for me to hear. "Let's go, we have a celebration dinner to get to." Rachel didn't look at him. She stared at me, her chest heaving. Then she turned and got into the passenger seat of the Mercedes. Justin smirked at me one last time. "The shuttle for the nursing home will be at the bus stop in an hour, Cliff. Don't miss it. Or do, I don't care." He got in the car, revved the engine, and backed out of the driveway. I stood there in the rain, clutching a garbage bag to my chest. The house I built was locked behind me. The chair I loved was in a dumpster. My family was driving away in a luxury car paid for by my life savings. Mr. Douglas, a neighbor, Mrs. Gable, called out from her porch. Do you need help? I couldn't look at her. The shame was burning my face hotter than any fire. I shook my head, gripped my cane, and turned toward the street. I wasn't going to wait for the nursing home shuttle. I wasn't going where they wanted to send me. I started walking. The rain in Seattle chills you to the bone, especially when you are 68 years old and have nothing but a thin windbreaker. I walked for blocks, the heavy trash bag cutting into my fingers. I made it to the main avenue, my knee throbbing with every step. I needed a place to think. I needed a plan. I saw a taxi and waved it down. I fumbled in my pocket for my wallet. I pulled out my credit card, the platinum one I had earned after decades of perfect credit. Take me to the downtown Sheraton, I told the driver. I need a warm room. He swiped the card. He swiped it again. He looked back at me in the rearview mirror. Declined, buddy. Try it again, I said, panic rising in my throat. There is a $50,000 limit on that card. It says card reported stolen and canceled, the driver said, handing it back. You got cash. I checked my wallet. Empty. Justin. He had been thorough. He had canceled my cards the moment he drove away. He wanted me helpless. He wanted me to have no choice but to get on that shuttle bus to the state home. I stammered. I remembered something. I took off my left shoe. Under the sole insert, I always kept an emergency stash. Old habits from my auditor days. You never know when you need to run. I pulled out 3 damp $20 bills and a $50. $110. That was my net worth. Just drive me as far as this gets me, I said quietly. Find me a cheap motel. The driver took me to a place off the highway, a motel with flickering neon lights and barred windows. The kind of place where people rent rooms by the hour. I paid cash for one night. The room smelled like stale smoke and bleach. The carpet was sticky. I locked the door, slid the chain across, and collapsed onto the sagging mattress. I was shivering, soaked to the skin. I looked at the black garbage bag sitting on the floor. My life reduced to a sack of trash. I reached for it. I needed dry clothes. I untied the knot, expecting to find my old sweaters, maybe some socks. I reached inside and pulled out the top layer. It was dirty laundry. Old rags. It smelled terrible. Is this it, I thought? Is this really how much she hates me? I dug deeper, angry now. I grabbed a heavy old coat from the bottom of the bag. It was my old wool coat from the 90s, the one with the torn lining. I was about to throw it on the floor when I felt something. The lining wasn't just torn, it was restitched, roughly, with thick black thread. And it was heavy. Too heavy. I grabbed the pocket knife I kept on my keychain. I sliced the stitching open. A thick manila envelope slid out and fell onto the dirty motel bedspread. Then a small blue book dropped out. I picked up the book. It was a passbook savings account from a bank I didn't recognize. I opened it. The name on the account was Clifford Douglas. The date of the deposit was yesterday. The amount was $900,000. I gasped, dropping the book. $900,000. That was the sale price of the house. Justin had told me the money was wired to his account for safekeeping. I picked up the manila envelope. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely open it. Inside was a single sheet of yellow legal pad paper. I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was jagged, hurried, as if written in the dark. It was Rachel's handwriting. Dad, the note read, "Don't trust me. Don't believe what you saw today." I had to do it. Justin has leveraged everything. He owes the cartel $500,000 for gambling debts. He forged the deed to the house months ago. If he knew I diverted the sale money to this account, he would kill us both. He has bugged my phone. He has cameras in the car. I had to be cruel to get you out safely. He thinks you are broke and going to the nursing home. Stay there. Hide. Use this money to save us. Do not call me. Wait for my signal. I lowered the paper. The image of Rachel screaming at me, throwing the bag, the hatred in her eyes. It was a performance. She wasn't throwing me away. She was handing me a weapon. I looked at the money in the passbook. I looked at the dirty motel room. I stood up and walked to the mirror. The sad, broken old man who walked in here was gone. I splashed cold water on my face. I looked into my own eyes. I am a forensic accountant. I spent my life finding the money trails that criminals tried to hide. Justin thought he was playing a game with a senile old man. He didn't know he just armed a bomb. I reached for the cheap burner phone I had bought at the gas station next door with my last $10. I dialed a number I hadn't called in 5 years. Gold, I said when the voice answered. Cliff. I thought you were retired. Or dead. Not yet, I said. I have 900 grand a target and a lot of free time. We are going hunting. The neon sign outside the window buzzed with a dying electrical hum, casting a sick pink light over the motel room that smelled like a mixture of bleach and something dead in the walls. I sat on the edge of the mattress, which sagged so deep in the middle it felt like a hammock. My hands were still shaking, not from the cold. Seattle dampness that had seeped into my bones, but from the adrenaline of pure, unadulterated shame. I looked at the peeling wallpaper, counting the water stains on the ceiling, just to keep my mind from snapping. $110 in my shoe. That was it. That was the sum total of a life of hard work, honest numbers, and playing by the rules. My eyes drifted to the black plastic bag on the floor. It sat there like a dark tumor in the middle of the room. My daughter had thrown it at me. She had called me trash. The memory played on a loop in my head, louder than the sirens wailing down the highway outside. I needed dry socks. My feet were numb blocks of ice inside my wet leather shoes. I hated that bag. I hated what it represented. But I had no choice. I was a man stripped of his dignity, and dignity doesn't keep you warm. I reached down and untied the knot. The plastic was slick with rain. As I pulled it open, a smell hit me that made my stomach turn. Coffee grounds, rotting banana peels. It wasn't just clothes. She had literally packed trash. I pulled out a sweater, my favorite blue cardigan, and it was stained with something brown and sticky. Tears pricked my eyes, hot and angry. This was cruelty for the sake of cruelty. It was performative. Why would she do this? Rachel was never cruel. She was the girl who cried when we caught a mouse in the kitchen. I started pulling things out, tossing them onto the sticky carpet. A shirt with a missing button, a single shoe, a stack of newspapers. I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch the wall, but I knew my old hand would break before the plaster did. I dug to the bottom, my fingers brushing against something coarse and heavy. I gripped it and pulled. It was my old wool coat. The charcoal gray one Beatrice bought me for our 25th anniversary. It was heavy, soaked with the dampness of the bag, but it felt wrong. I held it up in the flickering pink light. As a forensic accountant, my life was built on noticing the things that didn't fit, the numbers that were slightly off, the patterns that broke. And this coat broke the pattern. It was too heavy on the left side. It listed in my hand. I laid it on the bed, ignoring the grime on the coverlet. I ran my hands over the lining. The silk was torn, yes, just like I remembered, but someone had stitched it back up. I leaned in closer, squinting in the dim light. The thread was black, thick, and uneven. It was a rush job, a clumsy job. Rachel had been sewing since she was 6. She could hem a dress blindfolded. Why would she stitch my coat like a drunk surgeon? I pressed my fingers against the fabric. There was something rectangular and solid inside. Not a wallet. Too big for a wallet. My heart started to hammer against my ribs, a painful thudding rhythm. I didn't have a knife, so I grabbed the plastic room key and sawed at the thread. It didn't work. I used my teeth biting into the thread, tasting the dust and age of the wool. I ripped the seam open with a savage tear. A manila envelope slid out, followed by a small blue booklet. I stared at them. The room went silent. The buzzing of the neon sign faded into the background. I picked up the blue booklet first. It was a passbook for a credit union I hadn't used in 20 years. My hands trembled so violently I almost dropped it. I flipped it open to the last entry. The ink was fresh. The date was yesterday. Deposit, $900,000. I blinked. I rubbed my eyes and looked again. The number didn't change. 900,000. It was the entire sale price of the house. Justin had bragged about the deal he got. He said the money was in his escrow account. He said he was handling the finances because I was incompetent. I couldn't breathe. The air in the room felt too thin. I looked at the manila envelope. It wasn't sealed. I reached inside and pulled out a single sheet of yellow legal paper. The handwriting was jagged, frantic, the pen pressed so hard it had almost torn through the paper. It wasn't the neat cursive script Rachel used for her grocery lists. This was the writing of someone writing in the dark, someone writing in fear. I read the first line, and the floor dropped out from under me. The anger that had been keeping me warm evaporated, replaced by a cold, sharp terror that was infinitely worse. This wasn't a goodbye note. It was a confession, and it was a warning. Daddy, please listen to me and do not stop reading until the end. I had to do it. I had to be cruel. I had to throw that bag at you and scream those horrible things because he was watching. Justin has cameras in the living room. He has a tracker on my phone. He records every conversation in the car. If I had hugged you, if I had shown even an ounce of love or hesitation, he would have known that I was up to something. And if he knew what I really did with the house money, he would kill us both before the sun goes down. I could hear Rachel's voice in my head as I read the jagged scrawl on the yellow paper. It wasn't the screaming voice from the driveway. It was the terrified whisper of the little girl who used to hide behind my legs during thunderstorms. The letter continued, the ink slightly smeared in places where a tear must have fallen. Justin isn't just bad with money, Dad. He is drowning. He has a gambling problem that he has hidden for years. He owes $500,000 to the Petrov syndicate down at the docks. They gave him until Friday to pay, or they are going to take Toby. They threatened to take my son. That is why he forced the sale of the house. He needed your equity to buy his life back. But I couldn't let him take everything you worked for. I diverted the wire transfer. I forged the routing number on his laptop while he was sleeping. He thinks the bank is holding the funds for a compliance check. He thinks the money is coming to him in 48 hours. When he finds out it is gone and that you have it, he will tear the city apart. That is why you have to run. That is why you have to be the one who vanished. He thinks you are a senile old man rotting in a state facility. Use that. Let him think you are weak. You are the only one who can save us now. I love you, Dad. I am so sorry. Burn this letter. I lowered the paper. The silence in the motel room was heavy, pressing against my eardrums. My heart wasn't racing anymore. It had slowed to a cold, rhythmic thud, a heavy mechanical beat. My daughter wasn't a monster. She was a hostage. I looked at the mirror above the cheap dresser. The reflection stared back at me. Gray hair, wrinkles around the eyes, a slightly stooped posture from the rain and the cold. I looked like a victim. I looked like exactly what Justin said I was. A confused, helpless senior citizen who had suffered a stroke 6 months ago and never quite recovered. But that was the lie. That was the narrative Justin had spun for the doctors, for the neighbors, and even for Rachel. I walked to the sink and splashed cold water on my face. I scrubbed the skin until it was red. I looked into my own eyes again. The confusion was gone. The fear was evaporating, replaced by a cold, hard clarity that I hadn't felt since my days at the firm. They said I was losing my memory. They said I was getting mixed up. Justin would move my keys and tell me I lost them. He would change the time on the clocks. He told the neurologist I was forgetting names, and 6 months ago when I collapsed in the kitchen, they called it a mini-stroke. I closed my eyes and accessed the archive. That is what I called my brain. The archive. I remembered the date, October 14th. I remembered the breakfast, oatmeal with blueberries. I remembered the coffee tasting bitter metallic. I remembered the pill bottle on the counter. It wasn't my usual lisinopril. The shape was different. Oval, not round. Justin had said the pharmacy switched manufacturers. It wasn't a stroke. It was an overdose of beta blockers mixed with sedatives. He had drugged me to get me to sign the power of attorney. He had manufactured my decline. I opened my eyes. I recited the serial number of my first service weapon from the Army 40 years ago, 194426. I recited the tax code section for offshore shell companies, section 951. I recalled the exact amount of the check I wrote for Rachel's tuition in 2005, $12,450.33. My memory wasn't failing. My mind was a steel trap. I was a forensic accountant for 30 years. I didn't just look at numbers. I looked at the crimes hidden between them. I could spot a fraudulent wire transfer from a mile away. I could reconstruct a criminal enterprise from a shredded receipt. I had taken down CEOs who thought they were gods. I had put embezzlers in federal prison who were smarter, richer, and more dangerous than Justin could ever dream of being. Justin thought he was playing chess with a pigeon. He thought he could knock over the pieces and declare victory because I was too old to understand the game. He was wrong. I looked at the bank book again. $900,000. Liquid. Untraceable to him. Rachel had given me the ammunition. Now I had to build the weapon. I wasn't Cliff Douglas, the sad old man who got thrown out with the trash. I was Clifford Douglas, the auditor, and I was about to conduct the most aggressive audit of Justin's life. I reached for the burner phone. My hands were steady now. Precision. Calculation. That was the only way to handle a pawn desperate enough to sell his family to the mob. Justin was on a timer. The Petrovs wanted their money by Friday. That gave me 48 hours to turn his world upside down. I didn't just want to save Rachel. I wanted to dismantle him. I wanted to peel back every layer of his life until there was nothing left but the truth. He wanted the money. He wanted the house. He wanted to be the big man. I grabbed the thick wool coat. I put it on. It still smelled of mothballs and the damp interior of the garbage bag. But now it felt like armor. I smoothed the lapels. I checked the pockets. I was ready. The first step wasn't violence. Violence is messy. Violence is for amateurs like the Petrovs. The first step was information. I needed to see exactly how deep the rot went. I needed to see the books. I walked out of the motel room into the Seattle drizzle. I didn't look back. The man who walked in there was dead. The man walking out was coming for blood. The mirror in the motel bathroom was cracked, a spiderweb of glass that fractured my reflection into jagged, disjointed pieces. It was fitting. I looked like a shattered man. The gray stubble on my chin was weeks old, a patchy, neglected mess that Justin had insisted I keep. He claimed my hands were too shaky to hold a razor, handing me dull electric shavers that barely worked, just to maintain the image of the disheveled, incapable burden. I reached into the small plastic bag I had bought at the gas station, along with the burner phone. I pulled out a cheap, single-blade disposable razor and a bar of harsh yellow soap that smelled like industrial cleaner. I turned on the tap. The water sputtered, running brown with rust for a second, before clearing to a freezing cold stream. I didn't wait for it to warm up. The shock of the ice-cold water on my skin was exactly what I needed to wake up the man who had been sleeping for 6 months. I lathered the soap between my hands and scrubbed my face, washing away the grime of the Seattle rain, the sweat of humiliation, and the residue of the victim they wanted me to be. I brought the cheap razor to my throat. My hand, which had trembled violently earlier in the driveway, was now steady as a surgeon's. I scraped the blade down. 1 stroke. 2. The gray hair fell into the chipped porcelain sink like dead leaves. With every stroke of the razor, I peeled away a layer of the lie. I peeled away the senile Cliff. I peeled away the stroke victim. I peeled away the helpless father-in-law. Underneath the scruff, my jawline was still sharp. The skin was pale from months spent indoors, but it was firm. I washed the remaining soap off and looked up into the broken glass. The eyes staring back weren't watery and confused anymore. They were cold. They were calculating. They were the eyes of Clifford Douglas, the man who had once uncovered a $10 million embezzlement scheme hidden in a stack of invoices the size of a phone book. I dried my face with the thin, rough towel. I didn't put the ragged clothes back on just yet. I stood there breathing in the stale air of the bathroom, feeling the blood pumping through my veins with a rhythm that wasn't fear. It was focus. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was operating. I walked back into the bedroom and picked up the burner phone. It felt light like a toy, but it was the most dangerous weapon I possessed right now. I sat on the edge of the bed next to the $900,000 that could save my family or get us all killed. I punched in a number I hadn't dialed in 5 years. I didn't need a contact list. I never forgot a number that mattered. The phone rang once, twice. Gold and Associates. A gravelly voice answered. No secretary. Saul Gold never used them for his private line. It is audit season, Saul, I said. It was an old code. It meant drop everything, the house is on fire, and we need a bucket brigade. There was a pause on the other end. A long, heavy silence where I could hear the faint hum of a server room in the background. Then the sound of a leather chair squeaking as someone sat up straight. Cliff Gold said. His voice was low, cautious, stripped of its usual bravado. I heard you were in a home. I heard you had a massive stroke. I was about to send flowers to the estate. Save the flowers for my son-in-law, I replied, my voice hard. I am not in a home. I am in a motel off the interstate with a hole in my shoe and $900,000 in cash equivalents sitting on the bedspread. Gold let out a low whistle. That is a hell of a severance package, Cliff. What is the play? Justin. I said the name, tasting like bile in my clean mouth. He sold the house, he thinks he won. But he is leveraged to the hilt with the Petrov cartel. He needs this money by Friday or he is a dead man. And he is holding Rachel and my grandson as collateral. Petrov Gold swore softly. That is not just leverage, Cliff. That is a death sentence. If you have the money, why not just pay them off? Buy the girl out. Because I said, looking at the manila envelope, if I pay him off, he learns nothing. If I pay him off, he does it again in 6 months. And I am not just looking to save them, Saul. I am looking to liquidate him. I want to audit his entire existence until there is nothing left but a zero balance. Scorched earth, Gold said. I could hear the smile returning to his voice. I missed you, you old shark. What do you need? I need you to be a banker, I said. I need you to call him. Tell him there is a snag with the wire transfer. Tell him the Patriot Act flagged the transaction because of the size of the amount. Tell him the only way to release the funds immediately is a wet signature from the primary account holder. Me. He thinks you are in a nursing home, Gold noted. If I tell him he needs you, he is going to panic. He will come looking for you." "Exactly," I said. "I want him to look. I want him desperate. I want him sweating through his Italian silk suit. When he finds me, I won't be the shark. I will be the bait. I will be the confused old man wandering the park clutching a sandwich. I need him to think I am weak. I need him to think he can bully me one last time. It is risky, Cliff. If he gets physical, he won't hurt the golden goose until he gets the egg I cut in." Set the meeting. Friday night. The Grand Seattle. Make it look official. Notaries, bankers, the works. I want him to feel safe. I want him to bring his investors. I want everyone in one room. And the money, Gold asked. "The money is leaving the building," I said. "By the time he puts a pen to that paper, that account will be emptier than his soul. But he won't know that until the cuffs are on." "All right," Gold said. "I will make the call." "But Cliff, you are 68. You sure you can handle a cartel enforcer if this goes sideways?" I looked at my reflection in the dark window of the motel. The rain was still falling, washing away the dirt of the city. "I took down executives who had private armies, Saul," I said quietly. "Justin is just a gambler with a borrowed credit card. I will handle him. Just get the room ready." I hung up the phone and tossed it onto the bed. The plan was in motion. The clock was ticking. I picked up the thick wool coat. I needed to get back out there. I needed to look like a beggar, but think like a king. The transformation was complete. The hunt was on. The rain helped. It plastered my thin gray hair to my skull and darkened the shoulders of the wool coat until I looked like something dredged up from the bottom of Puget Sound. I had rubbed a handful of wet potting soil from a planter outside onto my trousers and splashed a little cheap whiskey I bought at the corner store onto my collar. I didn't drink it. I needed the smell. I needed to smell like failure. I needed to smell like the burden Justin told everyone I was. I stood outside the glass doors of Premier Seattle Realty. It was a sleek, modern fishbowl of a building in the financial district, the kind of place designed to intimidate you before you even stepped inside. Through the floor-to-ceiling windows, I could see them. Justin was in the main conference room, a glass box in the center of the office. He wasn't alone. There were two men with him. They weren't buying houses. I knew a real estate investor when I saw one. Investors look at spreadsheets. They look at architectural renderings. These men were looking at Justin. One was massive, a slab of muscle squeezed into a suit that was too tight across the shoulders, with a shaved head and a neck tattoo creeping up above his collar. The other was older, thin, with silver hair and a suit that cost more than the house I had just lost. He was sitting perfectly still while Justin was standing, waving his arms, sweating. Even from the street, I could see the sheen of panic on my son-in-law's forehead. It was the Petrov Syndicate. I recognized the older man. Viktor Volkov. I had seen his face in a file 15 years ago during a money laundering investigation involving a chain of car washes. He was a ghost, a man who didn't exist on paper, and he was sitting in my son-in-law's office. I pushed through the glass doors. The rush of warm, expensive air hit me, smelling of espresso and leather polish. The receptionist, a young girl with a headset, looked up and her face immediately wrinkled in disgust. "Sir, you cannot be in here," she said, her voice rising. "This is a private office. Please leave before I call security." I ignored her. I shuffled my feet, dragging my left leg as if the stroke damage was worse than it was. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I made a low, confused noise in my throat. "Justin." I mumbled loud enough to be heard, but slurred enough to sound pathetic. "I need Justin." The receptionist stood up, reaching for a phone, but I was already moving past her desk. I moved with the relentless, stumbling momentum of the senile. I headed straight for the glass conference room. Justin saw me. His eyes went wide. For a second, I saw pure terror. He thought I was dead or locked away. Then the terror shifted to rage. He looked at Volkov, who had turned his cold reptilian gaze toward me. Justin had to act. He had to show he was in control. He stormed out of the conference room, intercepting me in the middle of the open plan office. Every agent in the room stopped typing to watch. "What the hell are you doing here?" Justin hissed, grabbing my arm. His grip was bruising. "I thought you were on the shuttle." I looked up at him, making my eyes wide and watery. I let my hands tremble violently. "I got lost, Justin," I whined, my voice cracking. "The bus! I didn't have a ticket. I am hungry. I haven't eaten, please. I just need a few dollars for a sandwich." I saw the older man Volkov step out of the conference room. He watched us with amusement, lighting a thin cigarette right there in the non-smoking office. "Is this the problem?" Justin Volkov asked. His voice was like grinding stones. "Is this the asset holder?" Justin flinched. He turned to Volkov, putting on a sickeningly fake smile. No, Mr. Volkov, this is my father-in-law. He is very sick. Dementia." He wandered off from the facility. "I apologize." "He is meaningless." Meaningless. The word hung in the air. I let my shoulders slump further. "I am hungry," I repeated, reaching out a shaking hand toward Justin's chest. "Just a little money. Please. Beatrice's chair is gone. I have nothing." Justin shoved my hand away as if I were contagious. He looked around the office. He saw his employees watching. He saw the mobster watching. He needed to end this, and he needed to look dominant doing it. He couldn't be the man afraid of his old father-in-law. He had to be the benevolent, long-suffering provider dealing with a nuisance. "You are pathetic, Cliff," he said loud enough for the back of the room to hear. "I give you everything. I pay for your home. I pay for your care. And you come here smelling like a distillery, begging in front of my clients." He reached into his pocket and pulled out his money clip. It was thick with cash. He peeled off a single $20 bill. He didn't hand it to me. He crumpled it into a ball and threw it on the floor at my feet. "Take it," he spat. "Take it and get out. If you ever come back here, I will have the police drag you to the psych ward myself." The room was silent. The humiliation was absolute. A younger me would have broken his jaw. But Clifford Douglas, the auditor, knew that pride was expensive and information was priceless. I dropped to my knees. It wasn't an act. My bad knee screamed in protest as it hit the thin commercial carpet. I scrambled for the crumpled bill like a desperate animal. I crawled forward right to the edge of the conference table, where Volkov was still standing, watching me with a look of bored disdain. "Thank you," I mumbled into the carpet. "Thank you, Justin. You are a good boy." As I reached for the bill, my other hand, the one hidden in the long, baggy sleeve of the wool coat, moved. I was under the lip of the heavy mahogany conference table. In my palm was a small, high-powered listening device I had bought from a spy shop 3 blocks away with the cash from my shoe. It was no bigger than a quarter magnetic with a battery life of 48 hours. I grabbed the $20 with my right hand. With my left, I slapped the magnet against the metal support beam on the underside of the table. Click. It was a sound so soft it was masked by the rustle of my coat and my own pathetic sniffling. I stayed on the floor for a second longer, clutching the money to my chest, checking to make sure the device was secure. It was. I had done this a dozen times in corporate boardrooms during federal raids. The muscle memory didn't age. I struggled to my feet, using the table for leverage, leaving a smudge of dirt on the polished wood. Justin looked at the smudge with hatred. "Get him out," Justin barked at the receptionist. I didn't wait for her. I turned, clutching the $20 like it was a lifeline. I shuffled toward the door, keeping my head down, hiding the spark of triumph in my eyes. "I am sorry," I mumbled to Volkov. as I passed him. Sorry to interrupt. Volkov didn't move. He just blew a cloud of smoke into my face. Go die somewhere quiet, old man, he said. I walked out into the rain. The door closed behind me, sealing in the cool air and the scent of money. I walked a block, turned the corner, and ducked into a coffee shop. I went straight to the bathroom, locked the door, and pulled out the receiver unit and a pair of earbuds. I put them in. I turned the dial. The static cleared, and suddenly I was back in the room. The audio was crisp. I heard the door click shut. I heard Justin's heavy breathing. I apologize for that, Mr. Volkov. Justin said, his voice trembling now that the show was over. He is a complication, but he is handled. The house is sold. The funds clear on Friday. I don't care about your family drama. Justin Volkov's voice came through the earpiece, cold and deadly. I care about my $500,000, and I care about the laundering fees you owe us for the last 3 months. I have it, Justin stammered. The sale was $900,000. I will pay you everything on Friday, plus interest. Just please, don't touch my wife. We will see, Volkov said. You have 48 hours. If the money is not in my hand by sunset on Friday, we don't take your wife, Justin. We take the kid, the little boy, Toby. I froze in the coffee shop bathroom. A cold rage flooded my veins, sharper and more potent than anything I had felt before. Toby, my grandson. He was 5 years old. Justin had put a target on a 5-year-old's back to cover his own debts. I gripped the sink. The game had changed. This wasn't just about saving my house or my money anymore. This was a rescue mission, and Justin had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He let the spy into the war room. The rain had turned into a relentless, icy mist by the time the taxi dropped me off 2 blocks from the new house Justin had rented. It wasn't the home I had built. It was a McMansion, a sprawling, soulless structure of stucco and glass that looked impressive from the street, but was built with cheap materials that wouldn't last a decade. It was the perfect metaphor for my son-in-law. Flashy on the outside, hollow, and rotting on the inside. I pulled the collar of my wool coat up, hiding my face, though I doubted anyone would recognize Clifford Douglas in the shadows. To the world, I was gone. I was a memory. I crept through the neighbor's side yard, moving with a stealth I hadn't needed since my days auditing construction sites for mafia ties in the 80s. My knee ached with a dull, throbbing fire, but I pushed the pain into the back of my mind. Pain was information. It told me I was alive. It told me I was still in the fight. I reached the edge of the property line and crouched behind a row of neatly trimmed hedges. The kitchen lights were blazing, casting long, rectangular beams onto the wet lawn. I didn't need a listening device for this. The window was cracked open just an inch to let out the smoke from whatever Justin was burning on the stove, or perhaps just to let out the toxicity of the atmosphere inside. I could hear him before I could see him. His voice wasn't the smooth, charming baritone he used with clients. It was a high, thin screech of panic. Where's the confirmation, Rachel? I checked the account 5 minutes ago. It is empty. 0 balance. The wire should have cleared by noon. I shifted my position, peering through the gap in the curtains. The scene inside made my blood boil. Rachel was standing by the kitchen island, her back pressed against the marble countertop. She looked terrified. Her hands were gripping the edge of the counter so hard, her knuckles were white. She wasn't the fierce woman who had thrown the trash bag at me earlier. She was a cornered animal. I told you, Justin. She said, her voice trembling, but steady. The bank called. They flagged the transaction because of the amount. It is a $900,000 transfer. They need to verify the source of funds. It takes 48 hours. Liar! Justin screamed. He grabbed a ceramic bowl from the counter and hurled it at the wall. It shattered inches from Rachel's head, sending shards of pottery flying across the kitchen. Rachel flinched, curling in on herself, but she didn't run. She couldn't run. "Do you think I am stupid?" Justin hissed, stepping into her personal space. He loomed over her, his face twisted into a mask of pure, ugly rage. "I know you. You are stalling. Did you call the bank back? Did you scream at them? Did you tell them who I am?" "I tried," Rachel sobbed. "They said it is federal protocol. I can't speed it up." Justin grabbed her by the upper arms. I saw his fingers dig into her flesh. I wanted to smash the window. I wanted to climb in there and tear him apart with my bare hands. But I froze. I forced my feet to stay planted in the mud. If I went in there now, I was just an old man with a bad leg against a desperate, violent younger man. I would lose. And if I lost, Rachel lost. I had to watch. I had to witness the crime to ensure the punishment would be absolute. "You don't understand, do you?" Justin whispered, shaking her. "This isn't about a late fee. This isn't about a credit score. These people don't send letters. They send butchers. If that money isn't in Volkov's hand by Friday night, they aren't coming for me alone." He let go of her abruptly, turning away to pace the kitchen floor. He ran his hands through his hair, pulling at the roots. He looked like a man on the edge of a breakdown. "They know where we live, Rachel," he said, his voice dropping to a terrifying monotone. "They know my schedule. They know your schedule. And they know where Toby goes to school." Rachel gasped. She lunged forward, grabbing Justin's sleeve. "Don't you bring him into this," she pleaded. "Justin, he is 5 years old. You said this was just business. You said the house sale would fix everything. It would have fixed everything if you weren't so incompetent," Justin shouted, shoving her hand away. Volkov was clear. He said collateral. "Do you know what collateral is in their world? It isn't a car. It isn't a watch. It is flesh and blood." Just then, the door to the hallway opened. My grandson Toby walked in. He was wearing his dinosaur pajamas, rubbing his eyes, holding a stuffed bear by the ear. He looked so small in the cavernous, expensive kitchen. "Mommy," he said, his voice sleepy and confused. "Why is Daddy yelling?" The silence that fell over the room was heavy enough to crush a man. Rachel immediately plastered a fake smile on her face, though tears were still streaming down her cheeks. She rushed over to Toby, scooping him up into her arms, turning her back to Justin to shield the boy from his father's gaze. "It is okay, baby," she whispered, burying her face in his neck. Daddy is just stressed about work. Go back to bed. I will be there in a minute to tuck you in." Justin didn't look at his son with love. He didn't look at him with regret. He looked at the boy the way a gambler looks at his last chip. He looked at him like an asset to be liquidated. "Go to bed, Toby," Justin said, his voice devoid of any warmth. Rachel carried the boy out of the room, her shoulders shaking. Justin watched them go. When they were gone, he pulled a flask from his pocket and took a long, desperate swig. He pulled out his phone and dialed a number. "It is me," he said into the phone. "The money is coming. It is a bank error." "Friday." "Yes. I swear. I have the assets. I have everything under control. No, don't go to the school. Please. I will have it." He hung up and slammed the phone onto the counter. I had seen enough. I sank back into the shadows of the hedges, my heart hammering a war drum against my ribs. This wasn't just financial fraud anymore. This wasn't just elder abuse. This was a hostage situation. Justin had offered up his own son as insurance for his gambling debts. I touched the pocket of my coat where the passbook sat. $900,000. It was the only thing standing between my grandson and the monsters Justin had invited into our lives. Rachel was holding the line, lying to a violent man to protect me and the money, thinking she could buy him off. She didn't realize that you can't buy off a shark once there is blood in the water. I backed away, slowly stepping carefully to avoid snapping a twig. I made my way back to the street, the rain masking the tears of rage on my face. I had the recording from the office. I had the visual confirmation of the threat. Now I needed to close the trap. I wasn't going to just pay off the debt. I was going to make sure that by the time Friday night ended, Justin would never be able to threaten anyone ever again. I needed to see gold. We had a ledger to balance, and the currency was going to be pain. Saul Gold's office smelled like old leather pipe tobacco and the dust of 1,000 closed cases. It was a fortress of mahogany and books located in a brownstone that had survived the gentrification of Seattle, much like Saul himself. I sat in a wingback chair that cost more than the car Justin drove my filthy wool coat dripping rainwater onto a Persian rug that was probably woven before I was born. Saul didn't mind. He poured 2 fingers of single malt scotch into a crystal tumbler and slid it across the desk toward me. He didn't offer a coaster. Saul knew that some stains were necessary. I took a sip. The burn was grounding. It cut through the cold that had settled in my marrow. On the desk between us sat the small black receiver unit, hummed with a low static. Next to it was my notebook, open to a fresh page, my pen hovering like a scalpel. I wasn't the shivering old man from the street anymore. In this room, surrounded by statutes and case files, I was the auditor again. I was the man who found the missing millions in the Enron fallout. I was the man who could trace a penny through a hurricane. "Play it again, Saul," I said. "Filter the background noise. I want to hear the breathing." Saul adjusted a dial on his laptop. He was 70 years old, with wild white hair and eyes that had seen every version of human greed imaginable. He hit a key. The audio from Justin's conference room filled the silence. It was clearer this time. The hum of the office air conditioning was gone, replaced by the sharp, distinct voices of the men who held my family's fate in their hands. I listened to Volkov's voice. It was dry, devoid of emotion, the voice of a man discussing a spreadsheet, not a murder. "You are short, Justin. The wash was supposed to be $2 million this quarter. You deposited 1.5. Where is the rest?" I paused the recording. I looked at Saul. "Did you hear that?" I asked. Saul nodded, his face grim. "The wash. He isn't just borrowing money, Cliff. He is the laundryman." I leaned back, closing my eyes, letting the numbers visualize in my head. Justin ran a boutique real estate firm. High-end condos, luxury flips. It was the perfect cover. You buy a property with dirty cash through a shell company, sell it a year later for a legitimate profit, and suddenly the drug money is clean capital gains. It was money laundering 101. But Justin was a gambler, and gamblers always make the same mistake. They think they can borrow from the pot and put it back before anyone notices. "He is skimming," I said, the realization hitting me with the force of a physical blow. "He isn't just in debt to them. He stole from them. He took the cartel's money probably to cover his losses at the tables, or to pay for that Mercedes and the trips to Cabo, thinking he could replace it with the next deal." But the market slowed down. The next deal didn't close fast enough, and now he has a $500,000 hole in a ledger that belongs to murderers. I gestured for Saul to continue the tape. I had expenses." Justin's voice stammered on the recording. "Operational costs. The market is tough." "Don't lie to me, little man," Volkov interrupted. The sound of a lighter flicking echoed sharply. "We audited your books. You moved funds to an offshore gaming site. You thought we wouldn't see. You stole from the family." The silence on the tape was terrifying. I could hear Justin's rapid, shallow breathing. He was drowning. "The punishment for theft is usually final," Volkov continued. "But you have been useful, and you have this house sale, this asset, $900,000. "That is it," Justin cried out. "That covers the $500 I owe, plus the interest, plus the skimming. It makes us whole. I swear." The wire clears Friday. Just give me until Friday. We listened to the rest. The threats against Toby. The deadline. Sunset on Friday. Then the sound of the door closing. I signaled Saul to cut the audio. The silence rushed back into the room, heavy and suffocating. So that is the math, I said, staring at the amber liquid in my glass. The house sold for $900,000. He owes them $500,000 plus penalties. He needs every single cent of my equity to buy his life back. He isn't selling my house to pay for my nursing home care. He is selling my house to plug the hole he dug with his own greed. And if he doesn't pay, Saul said, leaning forward, his elbows on the desk. If he doesn't pay, they kill him, I said. But they don't just kill him, Volkov said, collateral. That means they hurt Rachel. That means they take Toby. They send a message. That is how these organizations work. They don't write off bad debt. They make an example of it. I stood up and walked to the window. The rain was streaking the glass, distorting the city lights into blurry smears of color. I looked at my reflection. The wool coat. The weary face. I looked like a ghost. But I felt like iron. We have 48 hours, Saul. What is the play, Saul asked. We go to the FBI. We give them the tape. No, I said sharply. We go to the FBI on Friday night. Not before. If we bring the feds in now, they will freeze everything. They will raid the office. Volkov will vanish into the wind, and his associates will still come for Rachel and Toby because the debt wasn't paid. The FBI can protect a witness, but they can't stop a hit squad that is already in motion. We need to neutralize the threat first. How, Saul asked. You have the money. Justin needs the money. I turned back to him. We are going to give him exactly what he wants, I said. But we are going to dictate the terms. He thinks the money is stuck in the banking system. He thinks he needs my signature to release it. We are going to confirm that fear. I walked back to the desk and picked up the burner phone. You are going to call him Saul. You are going to be Mr. Henderson from the bank's compliance division. You are going to tell him that the Patriot Act flagged the wire transfer because it originated from a joint account involving a vulnerable senior citizen. You are going to tell him that unless Clifford Douglas appears in person to sign an affidavit of competency and release the funds, will be frozen for 90 days. 90 days, Saul chuckled darkly. That is a death sentence for him. Exactly, I said. He will panic. He will offer to bring me in. But you will tell him that due to the sensitivity of the amount and the parties involved, meaning his shady investors, the bank requires a private signing. Neutral ground. A suite at the Grand Seattle Hotel. Friday evening. 6 p.m. 1 hour before sunset. 1 hour before his deadline with Volkov. He will bring Volkov, Saul warned. He will want to hand the money over the second it is released. I am counting on it, I said. I want them all in the same room. Justin, Rachel, Volkov, the whole nest of vipers. And you, Saul asked. You are going to walk into a room with a desperate embezzler and a cartel hitman unarmed. I tapped the side of my head. I am never unarmed, Saul. I have the truth. And I have $900,000 that they think is in the ether but is actually sitting in my pocket. I reached into the coat and pulled out the passbook. I slammed it onto Saul's desk. We are going to perform a magic trick, Saul. We are going to make this money disappear right under their noses. I need you to set up a charitable trust, the Beatrice Douglas Fund for At-Risk Youth. I want the paperwork drawn up immediately. You are donating it, Saul asked, his eyebrows raising. All of it. Every dime, I said. I want that money out of my name and into a protected 501c3 before I walk into that hotel room. I want the confirmation receipt in my pocket. When Justin asks for the money, I want to be able to hand him a tax deduction receipt instead of a check. That is insane, Cliff. Saul said, a slow grin spreading across his face. He is going to lose his mind. He is going to lose everything I corrected. And when he realizes the money is gone and he is standing there with Volkov, he is going to have to explain why he played games with the cartel. He will incriminate himself. He will scream. He will fight. And we will be recording every second of it. I looked at the listening device on the desk. I need a camera, Saul. A hidden one. High definition. Audio and video. Something I can wear. Maybe a pen. Maybe a button. I have a pen, Saul said, opening a drawer. Top of the line. 4 hours of recording time. Perfect, I said. I picked up the passbook again. It was heavy in my hand. It represented 40 years of mortgage payments, of fixing leaky faucets, of saving for a rainy day. It was my life's work. And I was about to burn it, to save the people I loved from the monster I had let into our home. Call him Saul, I commanded. Make him sweat. Tell him the bank closes at 5. Tell him Mr. Douglas is the only key to his survival. Saul picked up his office phone. He dialed Justin's number. He put it on speaker. I leaned in, listening to the ring. 1, 2, 3. Hello, Justin answered. He sounded breathless, like he had been running. Mr. Mason, this is Arthur Henderson from First National Compliance, Saul said, his voice dropping an octave, becoming smooth, bureaucratic, and terrifyingly official. We have a problem with the wire transfer regarding the Douglas estate. I watched Saul work. I watched the trap snap shut. Justin was stuttering, begging, threatening. He took the bait. He agreed to the meeting. He agreed to bring everyone. I hung up the call in my mind before Saul even put the receiver down. The stage was set. Friday night. The Grand Seattle. I wasn't just going to get my house back. I wasn't just going to get an apology. I was going to conduct a forensic audit of Justin's soul, and when I was done, his balance would be 0. I picked up my pen. It was time to write the final chapter. I watched Saul Gold lean back in his leather chair, pressing the phone to his ear with the casual indifference of a man who held all the cards. He cleared his throat, transforming instantly from a weary lawyer into Arthur Henderson, a mid-level bank compliance officer with a stickler for rules and 0 imagination. He put the call on speaker so I could hear my son-in-law unravel in real time. Mr. Mason, Saul droned his voice flat and nasally. We have completed the preliminary review of the wire transfer regarding the Douglas property sale. Unfortunately, due to the Patriot Act regulations concerning large cash movements involving vulnerable seniors, the transaction has been flagged for a Level 3 audit. I heard a noise on the other end that sounded like a strangled animal. It was Justin. What does that mean? Justin shouted, the panic cracking his voice. I was told 48 hours. It has been 48 hours. I need those funds released today. I understand your urgency, sir, Saul replied, typing on his keyboard to create background noise. However, the system is automated. The freeze is mandatory. Unless what? Justin screamed. Tell me what I have to do. Unless the primary account holder, Mr. Clifford Douglas, can appear in person to verify his identity and sign an affidavit of competency. We need to ensure he is not being coerced. If he can sign the release in the presence of a notary and our bank representative, we can override the freeze and release the funds immediately. There was a silence on the line. A heavy, terrifying silence. I knew what Justin was thinking. He was thinking about how he had thrown me out. He was thinking about how he had sent me to a nursing home shuttle that I never boarded. He didn't know where I was. I can bring him. Justin stammered, lying through his teeth. He is at a facility. It might take me a few hours to go get him. Excellent, Saul said. But Mr. Mason, our compliance team leaves at 6 p.m. sharp on Friday. If we do not have that signature by 6, the funds will remain frozen for the standard investigative period. 90 days. 90 days, Justin gasped. That is the policy, Saul said. We can meet you at a neutral location to facilitate the signing. The Grand Seattle Hotel has a business suite we use for high-net-worth clients. Suite 404, 6 p.m. Do not be late. And Mr. Mason, bring identification. Saul hung up the phone without waiting for a goodbye. He looked at me and winked. He is going to vomit, Saul said. He is going to run every red light in the city, I corrected. I stood up. It was time. I took off the clean shirt I had worn in Saul's office and pulled the damp, filthy wool coat back on. I messed up my hair. I rubbed my eyes until they were red. I put the burner phone in my sock and the recording pen in my shirt pocket. I walked out of the brownstone and back into the gray Seattle afternoon. I knew exactly where to go. Justin wasn't going to check the nursing home first. He would check the house. He would check the streets near the house. He would assume I was wandering around like a lost dog trying to find my way back to the only home I knew. I took a bus to my old neighborhood. It was risky, but I needed to be found. I walked to a small park 3 blocks from the house I had built. It was a place I used to take Toby to play on the swings. I found a bench under a dripping oak tree. I sat down. I hunched my shoulders, pulling the coat tight around me. I let my mouth hang open slightly. I stared at a puddle on the ground with the vacant intensity of the dementia patient Justin claimed I was. I waited. The rain dripped off the end of my nose. My stomach growled, real hunger mixing with the nerves. 10 minutes passed. 20. I saw a police cruiser drive by slowly. I ducked my head. I couldn't be picked up by the cops. If they put me in the system, Justin wouldn't be able to get me to the hotel. I needed to be invisible to everyone but him. Then I heard it. The roar of an engine being pushed too hard. A black Mercedes screeched around the corner, tires hydroplaning on the wet asphalt. It jumped the curb slightly before correcting. It was him. He was driving like a madman. He was checking the usual spots. The bus stop, the corner store, and now the park. The car slammed to a halt 20 yards away. The door flew open. Justin stumbled out. He looked like a wreck. His tie was loosened, his hair wild. He looked frantic. He scanned the park, his eyes wild. "Cliff," he screamed. "Cliff, where are you?" I didn't answer. I just rocked back and forth on the bench, muttering to myself. I needed him to believe I was broken. I needed him to believe I was no threat. He spotted me. He sprinted across the wet grass, his expensive Italian loafers slipping in the mud. He grabbed me by the shoulders and shook me hard. "I found you," he panted, his breath smelling of stale coffee and fear. "You stupid old man. I have been looking everywhere. Why didn't you get on the shuttle?" I looked up at him, making my eyes wide and fearful. I shrank away from his touch. I wanted to go home, Justin." I whined, my voice trembling. "I am cold. I lost my key. Can we go home now?" Justin let out a laugh that sounded more like a sob. He yanked me to my feet. "Yes, Cliff. Yes, we are going home. But first we have to sign some papers. Just one little signature, and then you can have whatever you want. Ice cream. A warm bed. Anything." He dragged me toward the car. He didn't notice the hardness in my arm muscles. He didn't notice that I wasn't leaning on him for support. He was too consumed by his own salvation. "Get in," he ordered, shoving me into the passenger seat. He ran around to the driver's side and jumped in. He fumbled with his phone, dialing a number as he peeled away from the curb. "I have him," he shouted into the phone. "I found him. We are coming. Tell Volkov to meet us at the Grand Seattle. Yes, bring the contract. Bring everything. It is over. I am fixing it." He hung up and looked at me. His eyes were manic. "You are going to be a good boy, Cliff," he said, speeding through a stop sign. "You are going to sign your name, and you are going to smile, and you are going to save my life." Do you understand? I nodded, clutching my coat. I understand, Justin, I whispered. I understood perfectly. He was driving us to the slaughterhouse. He just didn't realize he was the cattle. I touched the pen in my pocket. The camera was rolling. The trap was set. We were on our way to the Grand Seattle, and I was bringing the storm with me. The elevator ride to the 4th floor of the Grand Seattle Hotel was silent, save for the hum of the machinery and Justin's rapid, shallow breathing. He kept checking his watch, his eyes darting between the floor indicator and my face. I leaned against the back wall of the car, letting my mouth hang open slightly, clutching my filthy wool coat as if it were a security blanket. I was the picture of a man who didn't know what day it was, let alone that he was walking into a nest of vipers. When the doors slid open, the hallway smelled of lavender and old money. Justin grabbed my elbow, his grip tight enough to bruise, and marched me toward Suite 404. He didn't knock. He swiped a keycard and shoved me inside. The suite was expansive, a world of beige leather glass and panoramic views of the rainy city. But the air inside was heavy thick with the scent of stale cigarette smoke and aggression. In the center of the room sat a large glass conference table. Saul Gold was already there, sitting at the head of the table. He looked every inch the boring bank bureaucrat in his ill-fitting gray suit and thick glasses. He had a stack of files organized neatly in front of him. He didn't smile at me. He didn't even blink. He just checked his watch and tapped a pen against his ledger. But Saul wasn't the only one in the room. Viktor Volkov sat on a plush sofa near the window, swirling a glass of dark liquor. He was flanked by the massive bodyguard I had seen at the office. Volkov didn't look like an investor. He looked like a man who was deciding which limb to break first. And then there was Rachel. My heart slammed against my ribs. She was sitting in a corner chair, her knees pulled up to her chest. She was wearing sunglasses even though it was evening, and we were indoors. When she turned her head, I saw why. The edge of a purple bruise peeked out from beneath the dark lenses. Her lip was swollen. She looked terrified, small, and broken. Seeing her like that almost broke my character. I wanted to rush over to her. I wanted to tear Justin's throat out right there. But I forced my knees to buckle. I let out a low, confused whimper and stumbled. Justin caught me, hauling me upright. "Stand up, Cliff," he hissed in my ear. "Do not embarrass me." He dragged me to the table and pushed me into the chair opposite Saul. "Mr. Henderson," Justin said, his voice instantly switching to a smooth, ingratiating tone that made my skin crawl. "Thank you for accommodating us. This is my father-in-law, Clifford Douglas. We are ready to sign." Saul looked at me over the rim of his glasses. He played his part perfectly. He looked at my dirty coat, my unkempt hair, and my vacant expression, with a mixture of pity and professional disdain. "Mr. Douglas," Saul said, his voice flat, "I need to verify your identity. Do you have a driver's license or a passport?" I patted my pockets clumsily. I looked around the room, letting my eyes drift over Volkov, then Rachel, then back to Saul. I don't know," I mumbled. "I had a wallet. It was brown. Beatrice gave it to me." "Where is Beatrice?" Justin slammed his hand on the table. "He lost it." Justin snapped. "He loses everything. But I have his birth certificate and his social security card right here, and I have the power of attorney." Saul shook his head slowly. "The power of attorney is what triggered the audit, Mr. Mason. We need him to verify he knows what he is signing. Mr. Douglas, do you know why you are here?" I looked at Justin. He was sweating now. A bead of perspiration rolled down his temple. He leaned in close to me, his breath smelling of mints and fear. "Tell him, Cliff," he whispered menacingly. "Tell him you want to sell the house. Tell him you want me to have the money. Remember what we talked about in the car. Ice cream. A warm bed. Just say yes." I looked at Saul. I made my lower lip tremble. I want to go home, I whined. The nice man said I could go home if I wrote my name. Saul sighed a long, suffering sound. Technically, that is an affirmation of intent, Saul said, though he sounded dubious. Very well. Let's proceed. He slid a thick document across the glass table. It was a standard release form, or at least it looked like one. Beside it, he placed a heavy, expensive black pen. Sign at the bottom, Mr. Douglas, Saul said. I picked up the pen. My hand shook violently. I held it awkwardly like a child holding a crayon. I looked at the paper. The words swam before my eyes. I didn't sign. I just stared at the blank line. Justin was vibrating with tension. Sign it, Cliff, he urged. Just write your name. Cliff. I lowered the pen. I looked up at Justin with wide, innocent eyes. Who are they? I asked, pointing a shaking finger at Volkov. Justin froze. Volkov stopped swirling his drink. The room temperature seemed to drop 10 degrees. They are investors, Justin said through gritted teeth. They are buying the house, but the house is already sold, I said, my voice rising in a pitch of confused distress. You told me the house was sold. You threw away the chair. Why are we selling it again? Justin looked at Volkov. The mobster looked bored, but his eyes were cold flints. He is wasting my time, Justin, Volkov said softly. And my time is very expensive. Justin grabbed my shoulder. His fingers dug into the muscle hitting a nerve. Pain shot down my arm, but I didn't pull away. I needed this. I needed him to escalate. Just sign the paper, old man, Justin growled, dropping the facade. Why, I asked, tears welling in my eyes. I don't understand. Why do you need the money so bad, Justin? Is it for the bad men? Justin's face went white. He looked at Saul, who was busy arranging papers, pretending not to hear. Then he looked at Rachel. Shut up, Justin hissed. Just sign. Did you lose the money again? I continued, my voice taking on a wailing, pathetic quality. Like you lost the money for Rachel's car. Did you gamble it away? Justin snapped. The pressure, the fear of Volkov, the frustration of dealing with a senile old man, it all boiled over. He forgot where he was. He forgot about the banker. He only saw the obstacle. He grabbed the lapels of my coat and yanked me out of the chair. He slammed me back against the wall. The impact knocked the wind out of me, but I kept my hand on the pen in my pocket, ensuring the camera lens was unobstructed. Listen to me, you senile old bat, Justin screamed, his face inches from mine. I didn't just lose the money. I owe them. I owe them everything. Do you see that man over there? He kills people for a living. If you don't sign that paper right now, he is going to kill me. And then he is going to kill Rachel. And then he is going to go to Toby's school. I gasped, a genuine sound of horror at hearing it said so plainly. Toby, I whispered. Yes, Toby, Justin shouted, shaking me. He is 5 years old, Cliff. Do you want him to grow up? Do you want him to have a father? Then sign the damn paper. I need that $900,000. I need it to wash the debt. I need it to stay alive. He was admitting it. He was admitting the debt, the threat to his son, the laundering. It was all being recorded. The little green light on the pen. My pocket was blinking unseen, capturing his confession in high definition. I don't have a pen, I stammered, letting him drag me back to the table. He shoved me down into the chair. He grabbed the heavy black pen from the table and jammed it into my hand. Here, he roared. Sign. Now. I looked at the paper. I looked at Saul. Saul gave me a microscopic nod. We had it. We had the confession. We had the duress. We had the threat fought against a minor. But I wasn't done. I wanted Volkov. I wanted the connection to the syndicate. I held the pen over the paper. My hand was shaking so hard, the tip was tapping a rhythm on the page. "Mr. Investor," I called out to Volkov. My voice was thin, reedy. Volkov stood up. He walked over to the table. He moved with the silent grace of a predator. He placed his hands on the glass table and leaned over me. Up close, his eyes were dead. There was no humanity in them. "What is it?" Grandfather Volkov asked. "If I sign this," I asked, looking up at him, "will you promise not to hurt Toby?" Volkov smiled. It was a terrifying expression. "If the money is in my account by sunset, the boy is safe," Volkov said. "That is the deal. Debt paid. Life saved." It was the final nail. Conspiracy. Extortion. I looked back down at the paper. I stopped shaking. The tremor in my hand vanished instantly. I gripped the pen not like a confused old man, but like a weapon. I took a deep breath. The air in the room was stale, but suddenly it felt electric. "Okay," I said. My voice changed. The slur was gone. The whine was gone. It was the deep baritone voice of Clifford Douglas, the man who had stared down CEOs and corrupt senators. "I will sign." I leaned forward. Justin was panting, watching the pen tip. He thought he had won. He thought the nightmare was over. I wrote my name, but I didn't write it on the signature line. I wrote it in big, bold letters across the entire page. CLIFFORD. I put the pen down. I looked up at Justin. I stopped hunching my shoulders. I sat up straight, expanding my chest, filling the coat that had looked so big on me just moments ago. I looked him dead in the eye. "There is just one problem, Justin," I said, my voice steady and cold as a glacier. Justin blinked, confused by the sudden change in my demeanor. "What?" he asked. "What problem?" I reached into the inner pocket of my coat. Justin flinched, thinking I had a weapon. In a way, I did. I pulled out a folded piece of paper. It wasn't a check. It was a receipt. A receipt from the Beatrice Douglas Fund for At-Risk Youth. "The problem," I said, sliding the paper across the glass table toward him, "is that I don't have the money anymore." Justin looked at the paper. He looked at me. "What?" he whispered. "I donated it." I said, a small, cruel smile touching my lips. "All of it." $900,000. "It is gone, Justin. It is a charitable contribution. Tax deductible, of course." The silence that hit the room was absolute. It was the silence of a bomb counting down to 0. You what?" Justin choked out. I stood up. I didn't struggle. I didn't use the table for support. I stood up with the power of a man who had just dropped the guillotine. "I gave it away," I said, "because I would rather burn that money to ash than let a single cent of it go to a man who would sell his own son to save his skin." Justin's face turned a color I had never seen before, a mix of purple and gray. He looked at the receipt. He looked at Volkov. Volkov wasn't smiling anymore. He looked at Justin. "Is this true?" Volkov asked softly. Justin opened his mouth, but no sound came out. "And that," I said, turning to look at the mobster, "means he can't pay you. Not today. Not Friday. Not ever." I had lit the match. Now I just had to survive the explosion. The piece of paper slid across the glass table like a white flag of surrender, but to Justin it was a declaration of war. He stared at the donation receipt, his eyes bulging, the veins in his neck throbbing against his collar. For a moment, the only sound in the suite was the rain lashing against the window pane, a rhythmic drumming that sounded like time running out. Justin picked up the paper. His hands were shaking so violently, the paper rattled. He read the numbers. He read the charitable tax ID. He read the date. It was irrevocable. The money was gone. "You You gave it away. Justin whispered, his voice cracking into a high, keening sound that was pathetic and terrifying all at once. You gave away my life. He looked up at me. The mask of the grieving, stressed son-in-law fell away completely. What was left underneath was raw, ugly panic. He looked at Volkov, who was sitting on the sofa, unmoving, watching the scene with the detached interest of a man watching a bug struggle on a pin. He is lying, Justin shouted, turning to the mobster. He is senile. He doesn't know what he is doing. We can undo this. We can call the bank. It is a mistake. Volkov took a sip of his drink. He didn't look at the receipt. He looked at Justin. Money does not disappear by mistake, Justin Volkov said softly. And charity is a very hard thing to refund. It seems you have a liquidity problem. And I have a policy about liquidity problems. Volkov nodded to the massive bodyguard standing by the door. The giant took a step forward, his hand reaching inside his jacket. That movement was the spark that ignited the powder keg. Rachel, who had been huddled in the corner, paralyzed by fear and bruises, suddenly let out a sound that I will never forget. It wasn't a scream. It was a roar. It was the sound of a mother who realizes the wolf is in the den. She scrambled to her feet, knocking the chair over with a loud crash. She ignored Volkov. She ignored the bodyguard. She looked straight at me. "Daddy, run!" she screamed, her voice tearing through her throat. She lunged toward the table, putting herself between me and the men. Her sunglasses flew off, revealing the black eye in all its ugly glory. She didn't care anymore. She didn't care about the cameras or the threats or the shame. She only cared about one thing. "Get out, Dad!" she shrieked, grabbing my arm and trying to pull me toward the door. "It is a trap. They are going to kill you. They were never going to let you go. Run. Please just run." I looked at my daughter. In her eyes, I didn't see the woman who had thrown trash at me. I saw the little girl who used to bring me Band-Aids when I cut myself shaving. I saw the courage I had thought was lost. She was willing to die right here in this expensive hotel room just to buy me 5 seconds of a head start. But I wasn't going anywhere. I planted my feet. "Rachel, get behind me," I ordered, my voice steady. She didn't listen. She turned on Justin, her hands balled into fists, striking his chest in a flurry of desperate blows. "You monster!" she screamed at her husband. "You promised. You promised if he signed we would be safe. You lied. You lied about everything." Justin didn't even blink. He backhanded her. It was a brutal, casual strike, a reflex of violence. His hand connected with her jaw, and Rachel crumpled to the floor, sliding across the polished wood. "No," I roared. I started to move around the table, my hands reaching for Justin's throat. I didn't care about the plan anymore. I didn't care about the FBI or the evidence. I was going to kill him. But I stopped dead in my tracks. Justin reached behind his back underneath his tailored suit jacket. When his hand came back out, it was holding a gun. It was a snub-nosed revolver, black and ugly. He didn't point it at Volkov. He didn't point it at the bodyguard. He pointed it right at my face. "Sit down, old man," Justin screamed, spit flying from his mouth. "Sit down or I will blow your head off right here." The room froze. Saul Gold slowly raised his hands, his face pale. Even Volkov looked mildly surprised, raising an eyebrow as he set his drink down on the coaster. Bringing a gun to a meeting with the cartel wasn't brave. It was suicidal. But Justin wasn't thinking about survival anymore. He was thinking about destruction. "You think you are smart?" Justin panted, the gun shaking in his hand. "You think you can play games with me? I am the one in charge here. I am the one with the gun." He swung the weapon wildly, pointing it at Rachel, who was sobbing on the floor, then back to me. "Undo it," Justin demanded. "Call the bank. Call the charity. I don't care who you call. Get that money back." "I can't," I said, staring down the barrel. I calculated the distance. 6 feet. Too far to lunge. If I moved, he would fire. And at this range, even a shaking hand wouldn't miss. It is gone, Justin. The wire is processed. The trust is irrevocable. You can shoot me, you can shoot all of us, but that money is never coming back to you. Then you die, Justin whispered. He cocked the hammer. The mechanical click was deafening in the silent room. You ruined everything, he said, tears of rage streaming down his face. You ruined my life. I was going to be rich. I was going to be a king. And you useless, senile waste of space, you burned it. He wasn't looking at me as a person. He was looking at me as a failed investment. A broken TM. Mr. Mason Saul said, his voice trembling but professional. This is a bank matter. There are protocols. Violence will not release the funds. Put the weapon down. Shut up. Justin swiveled the gun toward Saul. Shut up, you bean counter. You did this too. You stalled me. You flagged the account, Justin Volkov said. His voice was calm, almost bored. Put the toy away. You are embarrassing yourself. Justin spun toward the mobster. The gun wavered between Volkov and me. Don't you talk to me like that, Justin shouted. I am not your errand boy anymore. I have a gun. I call the shots now. Volkov laughed. It was a dry, rasping sound. You have a gun, Justin, but do you have the will? You are a gambler. You bet on the wrong horse. And now you think shooting the jockey will change the race. Justin's eyes darted around the room. He was cornered. He was trapped between the law he thought he could outsmart and the criminals he thought he could control. He was realizing, perhaps for the first time, that he was neither smart nor tough. He was just a thief who had run out of road. I am going to count to 3, Justin said, aiming the gun back at Rachel. She curled into a ball, covering her head with her hands. If you don't pick up that phone and get my money back, Cliff, then I'm going to start with her. And then I am going to shoot the banker. And then I am going to shoot you. 1. I looked at Rachel. I looked at the bruise on her face. I looked at the terror in her eyes. This was my fault. I had brought us here. I had pushed him to the edge. 2. My hand moved to my pocket. Not for a phone. For the pen. I needed to make sure the lens saw this. I needed the jury to see his face when he threatened to execute his wife. Justin's finger tightened on the trigger. His knuckles were white. He was going to do it. He had snapped. The reality of his debt, the fear of Volkov, the loss of the money, it had broken his mind. 3. Wait, I shouted. I raised my hands. I stepped forward, putting myself directly in the line of fire, shielding Rachel with my body. I will do it. I lied. I will make the call. Just put the gun down. Justin hesitated. The greed flickered in his eyes, warring with the rage. He lowered the gun an inch. Do it, he breathed. Do it now. I reached into my coat pocket. Justin watched my hand. He thought I was reaching for the phone to call the bank. He thought he had won. He thought fear had finally broken the old man. But I wasn't reaching for a phone. I was reaching for the signal. I pulled out a white handkerchief. It seemed like a surrender. I wiped my brow with it, then dropped it onto the glass table. It was the signal Saul and I had agreed upon. Not for the bank, but for the cavalry. I looked Justin in the eye. The fear was gone from my face. The senile old man vanished. Clifford Douglas, the man who had faced down men twice as dangerous as Justin in boardrooms and back alleys, stood tall. I am sorry, Justin, I said, my voice dropping to a low, dangerous rumble. I lied. There is no bank to call, but there is someone else who has been listening to every word you just said. Justin frowned, confusion clouding his manic rage. What, he asked. The door to the suite exploded inward. The door crashing inward wasn't just wood splintering. It was the sound of Justin's entire reality fracturing into irreparable pieces. The room instantly filled with the deafening roar of tactical commands, the blinding sweep of flashlights, and the heavy thud of boots hitting the floor. Men in body armor swarmed the suite like a colony of angry black ants, their weapons drawn laser sights painting chaotic red lines across the walls, the furniture, and Justin's chest. "Freeze, federal agents! Drop the weapon!" The shouts echoed off the glass walls, but amidst the swirling storm of chaos, a strange, absolute stillness settled over me. The trembling in my hands, which I had forced for hours, vanished instantly. It didn't fade. It simply ceased, like a machine being switched off. The stoop in my shoulders evaporated. I stood up straight, my spine elongating my chest, expanding until the oversized, filthy wool coat no longer looked like a beggar's rags, but like a judge's robe. I looked at Justin. He was frozen, the gun dangling from his limp fingers, his mouth agape in a silent scream of confusion. He wasn't looking at the SWAT team. He was looking at me. He was watching the transformation happen in real time, his brain unable to process how the senile, helpless old man he had bullied for months was suddenly standing taller than anyone else in the room. I reached into my pocket, not with the fumbling grasp of the elderly, but with the precision of a surgeon. I pulled out the pen. The small green light was still blinking a steady rhythmic pulse in the mayhem. I didn't cower. I didn't raise my hands. I took a step toward him, ignoring the shouting agents. I walked right up to the barrel of his gun, my eyes locking onto his, with a gaze that was cold, hard, and utterly devoid of mercy. "Justin," I said. My voice wasn't raspy or weak. It was a deep, resonant baritone that cut through the noise of the raid. He flinched as if I had struck him. "Look at me," I commanded. He looked. And for the first time, he saw Clifford Douglas. He didn't see Rachel's burden. He didn't see a victim. He saw the auditor. He saw the man who hunted predators for a living. I reached out and plucked the gun from his trembling hand. He didn't resist. He was too paralyzed by the sudden shift in the universe's gravity. I tossed the weapon onto the glass table where it spun and clattered to a stop next to the donation receipt. I held up the pen, bringing it close to his face so he could see the lens. "Do you see this?" "Justin, it isn't a pen. It is a high-definition camera with a wide-angle lens and a microphone sensitive enough to hear a heartbreak." I leaned in, my voice dropping to a terrifying whisper that only he could hear. "It has been recording for 30 minutes. It recorded you admitting to the embezzlement. It recorded you threatening to execute your wife. It recorded you selling your son to a cartel hitman." Justin's knees buckled. He started to sag, but I grabbed his lapels, holding him upright. I wasn't done. I wanted him to hear the rest. "And the money," I said. A cruel smile touching the corners of my mouth. "The $900,000 you thought was your lifeline. It is gone. I donated it this morning. It is in a charitable trust for at-risk youth. You can't get it back. The cartel can't get it back. It is gone, Justin. Burned to ash." I released him. He collapsed to the floor, a heap of expensive Italian silk and ruined dreams. He looked up at me, tears streaming down his face, searching for the confused old man he thought he knew. But that man was never there. "You are finished," I said. I turned to the nearest FBI agent who had paused, watching the interaction with a mix of confusion and respect. I held out the pen. "Here is your evidence, Agent," I said clearly, my voice steady. "I believe this completes your case file." The chaos in the room was a symphony of shouting voices and tactical movement, but amidst the swirling storm of federal agents securing the perimeter. One specific moment of silence cut through the noise like a knife. Justin, still on his knees, looked up at Viktor Volkov. The mobster was the only person in the room who hadn't been thrown to the ground or handcuffed. He was standing calmly by the window, his hands raised in a non-threatening gesture, a strange, grim smile playing on his lips. "Help me," Justin screamed at the man he thought was his executioner. "Do something! Kill them! You are the cartel! You have to protect the investment!" Justin was clinging to the hierarchy of violence he understood. He thought the monster in the suit was the top of the food chain. He didn't realize the food chain had been rewritten while he was busy counting money he didn't have. Volkov reached into his jacket pocket. Justin's eyes lit up with a desperate hope, expecting a gun, expecting a bloodbath that would somehow create an exit. But Volkov didn't pull out a weapon. He pulled out a leather wallet, flipped it open, and let the gold badge catch the light of the tactical lamps. "Special Agent Miller, FBI Organized Crime Division," the man said, his Russian accent vanishing, instantly replaced by the flat American cadence of federal law enforcement. "You are under arrest, Justin, and thanks for the confession." It was crystal clear. Justin's face collapsed. It was as if the bones had dissolved beneath his skin. He looked from the agent to me, his brain misfiring as it tried to process the depth of the deception. He is a Fed," Justin stammered, looking at me with wild, bloodshot eyes. "You knew." "I didn't just know Justin," I said, my voice cutting through his panic. "I arranged the introduction." I stepped closer, looming over him. "The recording device I planted in your office on Tuesday didn't just capture your voice," I explained, watching the realization dawn on him, like a slow-moving horror movie. "It captured Volkov's. It captured the dates, the amounts, and the threats. I sent the digital file to the Seattle field office 3 hours ago. I offered them a trade. I gave them the money launderer and the recording in exchange for immediate protective custody for Rachel and Toby. They were listening in the van downstairs before we even walked into the hotel." Justin looked at the agent, then back at me. He looked at the donation receipt on the table. He looked at Rachel, who was being helped to her feet by a female officer. His world was gone. The money was gone. His freedom was gone. And the man responsible for it all was the old cripple he had thrown out in the rain. Something inside Justin snapped. It was a physical break, a wire tripping in his mind. The fear evaporated, replaced by a pure, animalistic hatred. He let out a guttural roar, a sound of pure, primal rage. He scrambled to his feet, ignoring the agents shouting at him to stay down. He didn't care about the guns trained on his chest. He didn't care about prison. He only wanted to destroy the source of his pain. "I will kill you," he screamed, lunging at me. He was fast. Desperation gave him speed. He grabbed a heavy crystal decanter from the sidebar as he charged, swinging it toward my head with enough force to shatter my skull. Rachel screamed. The agents shouted, but they were too far away. Justin was right on top of me. He expected me to cower. He expected the frail 68-year-old man with the bad knee to cover his head and beg for mercy. He expected the victim, but I hadn't been a victim since 1972. My body moved before my brain even issued the command. It was muscle memory dormant for 40 years, but never forgotten, forged in the mud of boot camp and sharpened in the jungles where I served, long before I ever picked up a calculator. I didn't step back. I stepped in. I shifted my weight to my good leg, dropping my center of gravity. As Justin brought the decanter down, I threw my left arm up in a hard block, catching his forearm with the blade of my wrist. The impact jarred my bones, but I didn't flinch. I grabbed his wrist with a grip of iron, using his own momentum against him. In one fluid motion, I pivoted, driving my shoulder into his chest, while simultaneously wrenching his arm behind his back. I heard the snap before I felt it. It was a wet, sickening crack as the radius bone gave way under the torque. Justin's scream changed from rage to agony. He dropped the decanter, which shattered harmlessly on the carpet. But I wasn't done. I swept his legs a sharp kick to the back of his knee that sent him crashing face first into the floor. I dropped a knee into the center of his back, pinning him to the ground with my full weight. I grabbed his broken arm and pulled it up high, immobilizing him completely. He thrashed like a fish on a hook, sobbing into the expensive rug. "Stay down," I growled, leaning close to his ear. The room went silent again. The agents had lowered their weapons, staring at the scene in disbelief. The senile grandfather had just neutralized a violent attacker in less than 3 seconds. I leaned down, my mouth inches from his ear, so only he could hear the final audit of his life. "You forgot the first rule of accounting, Justin," I whispered, my voice cold and steady. "Never underestimate the auditor. You thought I was weak because I was kind. You thought I was stupid because I was quiet. But I was just waiting for you to make a mistake. And you made the biggest mistake of all. You touched my family." I stood up slowly, dusting off the sleeves of my wool coat. I looked at the agents who were now moving in to handcuff the sobbing, broken man on the floor. "He is all yours, gentlemen," I said, calmly adjusting my collar. "Watch his right arm. I believe it is fractured." The sound of ratcheting steel was the final punctuation mark on Justin's career. 2 agents hauled him up from the carpet. His expensive suit now ruined his face, a mask of snot and tears. He wasn't the arrogant real estate mogul who had looked down on me in his office anymore. He wasn't the tough guy who threatened women and children. He was just a thief who had been caught, and like all thieves, he wasn't sorry for what he did. He was sorry he lost. "Wait," Justin screamed, thrashing against the grip of the federal agents. "Wait, don't take me yet. The money. We have to talk about the money." He looked at me with eyes that were wide and manic. He didn't care about the prison sentence. He didn't care about the fraud charges. In his twisted gambler's mind, the $900,000 was still the only thing that mattered. It was the only thing that could buy him protection inside, the only thing that could stop the cartel from reaching him, even in a cell. "Cliff," he begged, his voice cracking. "You can't be serious. You didn't give it away. Tell me you didn't give it away." "That is my money. I earned it. I sold the house. I watched him struggle. I felt nothing." The pity I used to feel for him, the desire to help him succeed, it had all been burned away in the rain 3 days ago. "It was never your money, Justin," I said calmly. "It was the equity of 40 years of hard work. It was Beatrice's legacy. And you tried to use it to pay for your sins." I reached into the pocket of my wool coat. I pulled out the donation receipt again. It was a simple piece of paper, a printout from a bank transfer. To anyone else, it was just a record of a transaction. To Justin, it was a death certificate. I crumpled the paper in my hand. I squeezed it into a tight, hard ball. I remembered the feeling of the black plastic bag hitting my chest in the driveway. I remembered the weight of it. I remembered the humiliation of being told I was garbage. Justin watched my hand. He stopped struggling. He stared at the ball of paper as if it were a diamond. "Give it to me," he whispered. "Please, I can fix this. I can call the charity. I can say it was a mistake. Just give me the paper." I stepped forward. I looked him deep in the eyes. I wanted him to remember this moment for the next 25 years he spent in a federal penitentiary. "You said I was a burden, Justin. You said I was trash. You threw me out on the street with a bag of garbage and told me to disappear." I drew my arm back. "Well, I am returning the favor." I threw the crumpled ball of paper. It hit him square in the face, bouncing off his sweaty forehead and falling to the floor between his feet. "Take your trash, Justin," I said, my voice cold and final. "That is all you have left. That is your inheritance." Justin looked down at the paper on the floor. He tried to lunge for it, but the agents held him back. He let out a scream that wasn't human. It was the sound of a soul breaking. "No," he howled. "No, you can't do this. That is $1 million. You crazy old man. You burned it. You burned us all." "Get him out of here," the lead agent ordered. They dragged him toward the door. He kicked and screamed, his expensive shoes leaving scuff marks on the floor, his eyes fixed on the ball of paper until the door slammed shut, cutting off his wailing. The room fell silent. Rachel was standing by the window, shivering, holding her arms. Saul Gold was packing up his briefcase, his hands shaking slightly. I looked at the crumpled receipt on the floor. It was just paper. It was worthless now. But it had bought my freedom. I adjusted my coat. I didn't feel like a beggar anymore. I felt clean. The audit was complete. The books were balanced. And the trash had finally been taken out. The agents cleared the room, taking the violence and the noise with them, leaving behind a silence that felt heavier than the gunfight that almost happened. I turned to the corner where Rachel was still standing. She was shaking her arms wrapped tight around herself, staring at the spot where her husband had been dragged away. The bruise on her cheek was darkening, an ugly souvenir of the man she thought she loved. I walked over to her. My knees finally decided to remind me they were old, and I let out a breath I felt like I had been holding since Tuesday. Rachel looked up at me. Her eyes were filled with tears, but not the terrified kind. They were tears of absolute, crushing guilt. "Daddy," she whispered, her voice barely a ghost of a sound. "I am so sorry. I threw garbage at you. I screamed at you. I left you in the rain. I humiliated you in front of the whole neighborhood." I put a finger to her lips, silencing the apology she didn't need to make. "You didn't leave me," I said gently. "You launched me. You gave me the only weapon that could kill the monster. If you hadn't thrown that bag, if you hadn't been cruel, Justin never would have let me out of his sight. You bought my freedom with your reputation. That is bravery, Rachel, not betrayal." I pulled her into a hug. It wasn't the polite hug of a distant relative. It was a desperate, clinging embrace. She buried her face in my wool coat, sobbing into the rough fabric that still smelled of the motel and the rain. I held her tight, stroking her hair like she was 5 years old. Again. "It was a performance, Rachel," I told her softly. "You played your part perfectly. You made him believe I was weak so I could be strong. You saved us." The door to the adjoining bedroom opened. A female officer stepped out, holding the hand of a small boy in dinosaur pajamas. "Toby." He looked sleepy, confused, clutching his teddy bear by the ear. He rubbed his eyes, looking around the strange hotel room. He saw me, and his face lit up with that pure, uncomplicated joy that only children possess. "Grandpa," he chirped, breaking free from the officer and running across the suite. I caught him, lifting him up despite the ache in my back and the fatigue in my bones. He felt solid. He felt real. He was the reason for the lie. He was the reason for the fight. "Where is Daddy?" Toby asked, looking around the empty room. "Is he still yelling?" "Daddy had to go away for a long time, buddy," I said, looking at Rachel. "He isn't going to yell anymore. We are safe now." Rachel wiped her eyes, forcing a brave smile for her son. She walked over and wrapped her arms around both of us, completing the circle. "We are safe," she repeated, the reality of it finally sinking in. She looked at the crumpled donation receipt lying on the floor, then at me. "But Dad, the money, the house. We have nothing. We are homeless." I smiled, bouncing Toby in my arms. I looked at my daughter, free from the shadow of the man who had tormented her. I looked at my grandson, safe from the collateral damage of a gambling debt. "We have everything, Rachel," I said firmly. "We have our lives. We have our freedom. And I have my memory back." I tapped my temple. "The forensic accountant is out of retirement. I know how to find money, and I know how to build a life. We don't need the 900,000. We will rebuild. We always do." 6 months later, the gavel came down with a finality that echoed louder than any gunshot. 25 years. That was the price of Justin's ambition. Money laundering conspiracy to commit murder and wire fraud. He cried when the marshals led him away, his expensive suit replaced by a jumpsuit the color of a bruise. He thought federal prison would be a sanctuary, a place where the Petrov syndicate couldn't reach him. He was wrong. The cartel has a long memory, and they don't like bad debts. Last week I read a small blurb in the Metro section of the newspaper. An inmate in the federal detention center was found beaten in the recreation yard. He survived, but the doctors say he will never walk without a cane again. The irony is almost poetic. He tried to break me to stand tall, and now he is the one who will spend the rest of his life looking at the ground. We didn't buy the old house back. I couldn't walk into that living room without seeing the ghost of the man I used to be, the victim huddled in a chair. We left Seattle behind. We bought a foreclosure in the valley, a farmhouse with 10 acres of green grass and a barn that leans a little to the left. It needs work, it needs paint, it needs love, and we have plenty of that to give. Rachel isn't hiding in the corner anymore. She is sitting at this kitchen table right now, surrounded by spreadsheets. We opened a boutique consultancy firm together. We help seniors audit their assets and protect themselves from predatory relatives. She has a nose for fraud that rivals my own. She took her trauma and forged it into a shield for others. She isn't just my daughter anymore. She is my partner. I sit on the porch swing, the wood creaking gently in the afternoon breeze. The rain here feels different. It doesn't chill you. It washes things clean. In the yard, Toby is chasing a golden retriever puppy we adopted from the shelter. He is laughing, a pure, unburdened sound that makes the birds scatter from the trees. He doesn't ask about his father. He doesn't ask about the shouting. He just asks if we can go fishing in the creek tomorrow. I reach into the breast pocket of my flannel shirt. I still carry the little blue passbook. It is a souvenir now. A relic of the war we survived. The pages are crinkled from the humidity of the motel room where I first found it. I flip it open to the final entry. The balance reads 0. The withdrawal for the youth charity is stamped in red ink. To anyone else, it is a record of a loss, a fortune given away. But I know better. I take out my pen. I draw a single thick line through the 0 balance. Underneath it, in my steady auditor's script, I write one word: priceless. I close the book and slide it back into my pocket. The sun is setting over the ridge, painting the sky in shades of gold and violet. The audit is closed. The ledger is balanced. I am Clifford Douglas, and I am finally home. They say blood is thicker than water, but I learned that loyalty is thicker than both. For 40 years, I thought my job was to shield my family from the harsh realities of the world. But I realized that true protection isn't about hiding the truth. It's about having the courage to face it when the wolf comes to the door. I played the fool to catch a predator, and I discovered that my greatest asset wasn't my bank account, it was my mind. Never let anyone tell you that you are past your prime. Wisdom is a weapon, and dignity is worth fighting for, no matter the cost. If you enjoyed this story of justice, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Let me know in the comments. Have you ever had to cut a toxic family member out of your life to save yourself? I want to hear your story.